Hey everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about the fourth lesson I learned over my first 1,000 trades. And I mentioned it briefly in my last video, but that lesson is that I think one of the biggest mistakes I made starting out and learning how to trade was trying to trade as a scalper. And I think that was a big mistake for me. It's something that held me back for a long time. And I think that most beginners shouldn't scalp. And I'm going to explain my thought process and my reasoning in this video. So there are four major reasons why I think scalping is detrimental when first starting out. There's a performance or skill-based reason. There is a psychological reason. There's a habit-based reason, and there is a mathematical reason. So I'm going to go in that order and talk about those four reasons why I think that I messed up by starting off trying to scalp, and I think that it's something that most beginners will probably struggle with if they try to start out learning how to trade as a scalper. So the first reason I had was based on skill level and performance. I think most people approach trading with a level of overconfidence, arrogance, and when I say most traders, I'm extrapolating my own experience to others, but I do think that most people do approach, from my experience with talking to new traders, I think most people do approach trading with a level of overconfidence, thinking that they can predict the market more than is realistic. And that was a huge problem for me. And that's why I actually started out scalping, because I felt like I had a good grasp on percentages. And I felt like I could predict the market 80% of the time, or 90%, or 70%, and in those upper ranges. It was a little bit of stubbornness that I didn't want to be a trader who guessed and who was right 50% of the time, even if it meant being profitable. I wanted to be right 70 and 80% of the time or more. And not only did I want that, I thought it was possible, and I thought I was actually doing it. I thought I was capable of doing it. And so when traders come in with that mindset, I think it sets up a whole host of problems, because the market does not move with that probability. Thinking that something's going to happen 80% of the time or 90% of the time is not realistic. And I think the reason that I fell into that trap is because when I save, and I think when everyone saves charts, visually the charts that work are the ones that we save. So, for example, looking at a double bottom, we'll save all the double bottoms that work, and we'll ignore the ones that start to try to form a double bottom, but eventually become a bear flag and continue down. And it's not intentional, it's just a bias of data collection. It's easier to spot the ones that work. The other ones aren't as easy. And so what ends up in my folder is a bunch of success stories. And so I base my probabilities on these successful examples, thinking that this is how it actually is, but that's not accurate. So I think most beginners do it that way, and they use success stories to gauge their probabilities, and it's always an overestimation. So approaching trading as a beginner and having to win 80 to 90% of the time, or 70% of the time, to have a scalper's trader's equation, so risking 3 points to make one and trying to be right 80 or 90% of the time, is so difficult, because the skill level is just not there. There's a level of arrogance, a level of overconfidence, but there isn't the ability to actually gauge probabilities with enough accuracy to scalp profitably. And that's what I realized in my experience over the first 4 or 5 years of just trying to be a scalper. I realized that I wasn't as accurate as I needed to be. And it took me 4 years to realize that I thought I could predict the market with 80% probability, but my stats didn't show that. And I started to realize that this is not the way to go for me at this level, at this stage. And I think that's true for all beginners. So beyond skill level and performance, the second reason is the psychological aspect. And I think once you get into the scalping mentality, my personal experience is that there's so much pressure on each day. There's so much pressure on every single trade, because you know that if you're risking 3 points to make one, you have to be right 80% of the time to make money. And if you mess up just once, you know that out of the next 9 trades, you have to have 8 winners. Or if you mess up twice, one is a bad mistake, it's a screw up, and the other one is just a legit loss, then the next 8 trades in your mind, psychologically, it feels like I have to make all 8 of these. I have to make all 8 of these work. And that psychological burden is so taxing because it increases stress during the trade, so you can't make good decisions. It makes you miss trades because you don't want to take it because you don't want to lose. It makes you exit early when you should give it time. It's just that burden is so high that it makes it almost impossible to trade comfortably and also take the trades that are necessary because the cost is so high. It's too much of a risk to take that loss and mess up the trader's equation. So that psychological burden I've noticed for myself is it doesn't allow you to trade effectively and make rational, logical decisions. So that's the psychological aspect. The third one is based on the habits of a scalper. And I think by starting off as a scalper for myself, I got into the habit of believing that every bar warranted my entry, that I needed to take a trade on every bar, every other bar, or that I should be finding my way or sneaking my way into every single opportunity. And because you can be more versatile, setting wide stops, scaling in, it feels like you should be a part of everything. And I didn't learn the necessary patience to look at a setup and be like, this is not for me. Just stay out. It's not your setup. But I thought I can make it my setup by structuring a trade profitably, by using a wide stop, by scaling in different increments, so like 1 here, 2 here, 4 here. Like I started off in all these weird ways because I felt like it was necessary for me to participate in everything. And again, I think that's just a bad habit because it doesn't teach the necessity of patience and waiting for a setup to present itself because you think you can weasel your way into everything. So that's the third reason. And the last reason is the mathematical reason. I think this one really struck me because there's actually a mathematical reason why beginners shouldn't scalp. And it actually is a mathematical reason why scalping in general is much, much more difficult. And it's not just that you can't afford to lose and there's no margin of error because you can only lose a few times. It's actually very, very sensitive to performance. And I'm just going to show my screen now and explain what I mean. Okay, so Trader 1 has a low probability strategy with a 40% win rate. And let's say he risks $1,000 to make $2,000. So he has a 1 to 2 risk to reward. So when he's right, which is 40 times out of 100, his winning trade is $2,000. So he'll make $2,000 on those 40 winning trades minus the 60 losing trades out of 100, where he'll lose 1,000 on each of those. And so that's 80,000 minus 60,000, which is equal to 20,000. So Trader 1 will make $20,000 for every 100 trades taken. Now let's look at Trader 2, the high probability scalper with an 80% win rate. So let's say she's going for a 3 to 1. So risking 3 points to make 1 point. And she's going to risk $3,000 on her losses when she loses, and she's going to look to make $1,000. So small reward, big risk. So when she's right 80% of the time, so 80 times out of 100, she's going to make $1,000. And when she loses 20% of the time, 20 times out of 100, she will lose $3,000. So that's 80,000 minus 60,000, which is 20,000. So we can see that both of these traders, with their differing strategies, actually have the same monetary edge for every 100 trades. So for every 100 trades taken, Trader 1 will make $20,000 and Trader 2 will make $20,000, even though their metrics and the structures of their trades are very different. Now, what's really fascinating to me is normally when we look at a trader with a low win rate versus a trader with a high win rate, it's obvious that the trader with a low win rate can lose many more times. So Trader 1 can lose 60 times out of 100, and Trader 2 can only lose 20 times out of 100. Even though they make the same amount after 100 trades, there's a lot more pressure on Trader 2. There's less margin for error because they can only lose 20. And if they lose any more than that, then their edge starts to drop. But what I find very interesting is that it's the rate that their edge drops. So with an equivalent 5% drop in performance, a high probability scalper struggles a lot more. So I'll give an example. So let's take trader 1 again and change the font. And let's say that for whatever reason, the performance over 100 trades changes by 5% only. So there's a 5% drop in performance. And so now trader 1 will win 35 times out of 100, make $2,000 on each of those winning trades. He'll lose 65 times out of 100 and lose $1,000 on each of those losing trades. And so he will make 70,000 minus 65,000, which is 5,000. So trader 1 will now make $5,000 for every 100 trades taken. Now let's say trader 2 has an equivalent drop in performance. So trader 1 suffers a 5% drop in performance, and trader 2 also suffers an equivalent 5% drop in performance. So now it goes from an 80% win rate to a 75% win rate. And so now trader 2 will make $1,000 on the 75 winning trades, and out of the 25 losing trades, she'll lose 3,000 on each of those. That's 75,000 minus 75,000 equals 0. That's $0 for every 100 trades. And so trader 1 went from profitable to slightly less profitable with a 5% drop in performance. Trader 2 went from equally profitable at $20,000 for every 100 trades down to no edge at all and break even and probably negative after commissions, just by an equivalent 5% drop in performance. And so I think that speaks volumes, because it's not just that there's more pressure on a high probability trader because they have to win more often and they can't afford to lose, but that an equivalent 5% drop in performance is much more devastating to a high probability trader. So if you could choose one of these situations, knowing that performance fluctuates and it varies and traders have good days and bad days, I feel like I'd rather be on this side where I can afford to drop 5% in my performance and still be profitable. And I think that comparison shows the sensitivity of a high probability strategy, where you can make the same amount as a low probability trader, but just take off 5% from your performance and suddenly you lost the entire edge. And it's so difficult to stay on top of your game over hundreds and thousands of trades. So I think this lower probability strategy is safer and more effective for beginners. And low probability doesn't mean 40%. It can be 50%, 60%. It's just lower. The lower the win rate necessary to be profitable, the less sensitive it will be to changes in performance and drops in performance. So if you're having an off day or you're struggling a little bit, there's so much more leeway and margin for error as compared to an equivalent drop in performance for a scalper. So I think over time, a trader will get a sense of which setups they should scalp on and how much scalping they should incorporate. But for the most part, I think it's best to start off with a swing strategy and then slowly incorporate scalping and not start off as a scalper. So I hope this was helpful. I was speaking generally about beginning traders, but this was really my experience with scalping and how I feel like it impacted my trading. Some people might start off as scalpers and become very successful. So everyone is a little bit different, but these are things that I found affected me. And I think for most beginning traders, I think it applies. So thank you for watching. I'll keep posting my regular trades, and I'll post my 5th lesson from the first 1,000 trades as soon as I record it.